So I work closing shifts at a restaurant in downtown Pomona. I get off work at around 12, and every night when I come home, I get to see what I'm sure some of you have heard of as the hookers on Holt. Those are street walking prostitutes that are pretty much always around in downtown Pomona. And prostitution currently in America, besides parts of Nevada, largely consists of human trafficked individuals and, sorry about that. Mostly consists of human trafficked individuals who are not working consensually. So my proposition is that legalizing prostitution would improve safety conditions for sex workers and clients. This is pretty much going to be done in three ways. The first and primary one is protection from STDs, because that's a huge problem in the sex work industry. There's protection from clients, and then there's protection from employers. So the primary thing, STDs, with legalization is going to come the wonderful government regulation. And government regulation in terms of prostitution, as is done in Australia, generally consists of STD testing, which is the primary safety net for not only clients but for the prostitutes themselves, because I mean, that's sort of the biggest weight that's pulling down their value. So when you go to a brothel in Australia, the clients are checked out before they engage in their purchase, let's put it that way. They're given a visual inspection under a black light and such to make sure that they don't visually have any discrepancies. And then they're also made to wear a condom, which is a physical protection from STD transmission. The workers themselves are given STD tests, which maintains the cleanliness of the establishment. Now in Australia, streetwalkers are not legal. You can't just walk around and sell sex willy-nilly. It has to be done within a established brothel that is regulated by the government. Now the biggest benefit of an establishment, a brothel, is that there's protection from clients for the workers. The main problem with street walking is that anyone can walk up, anyone can take you to a motel, and there's no protection besides from your pimp afterwards. And the pimp is the person who's forcing you to do it from the beginning. So the protections from clients are pretty much nil in prostitution today, and that would be benefited greatly by legalization. Now, the third point is protection from employers. Now, the biggest part of that is the human trafficking aspect, and human traffickers generally are felons, let's put it that way, and they would not be able to open and run a brothel legally within any state. So if prostitution were legalized and brothels were allowed, then legal entrepreneurs would have to open up these establishments and run their businesses ethically, which is currently not how any of this is done. Now, Dr. Linda M. Rio, who is a mental health professional and psychotherapist in California, pointed out that there are a few traditional goals of prohibition of prostitution, and those are punishment for the action, deterrence from committing the action in the first place, and rehabilitation for workers. And in one of my sources, Dr. Linda M. Rio points out that the actual act of prohibition doesn't doesn't distract from any of those points substantially. So legalization versus illegalization does not affect whether or not these individuals are getting help, whether it certainly doesn't lower the instances of trafficking or the purchase of sex work. Now the country I mentioned earlier, where prostitution is legal, it's the closest comparison to America that I could find, and that's Australia. Now, in Australia, according to the Australian Institute of Criminology, they extensively researched it because it's legal in Australia, and they found that in brothels they have low rates of drug use, low rates of STDs, and the mental health capacity of the individuals working is on par with the general population, which I take as meaning that these individuals are healthy and they are there consensually on their own free will. This is pretty much the antithesis of what's going on now, where workers have no protection from their employers because it's an illegal business. They can't go to the police or authorities because what they're doing is illegal. And if it were legalized or at least decriminalized, then these individuals, these sex workers, would be able to get the help that they need to feel safe in their daily lives. That's the end of my time. So, I would like to summarize by saying that legalization of prostitution would improve safety conditions for sex workers and clients.
All right, the proposition is pretty clearly identified, and there is a preview of what the supporting structure is, although the supporting points, when you present them, they are really just labels of the subject matter. You want declarative sentences for those points, and you just have kind of the tags, so it's like prostitution and something about STDs, but it wasn't a claim. I think what you need is a claim that says legalized prostitution would reduce STDs. Legalized prostitution would result in the clients being protected. Legalized prostitution would result in the workers being protected from their employers. So you want declarative sentences on those points. All you had were labels. When you watch back, you'll hear what I'm talking about.
So like the redundancy of the repeat?
Well, so it's like it's a declarative statement. Otherwise, it's just a topic. You're saying legalize prostitution. It'll do something for STDs, maybe for clients and for employers. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but there weren't claims. So that's what you need to, when you watch the speech, listen for that. You'll see what I'm talking about. The citation of the supporting points in the body of the speech was relatively clear, so you're doing a good job there. Your credibility is enhanced primarily through your presentation. You seem like to know what it is that you want to argue, and you have an explanation for some of these concepts, and you do a good job speaking to the audience. So on delivery issues, you're okay, but your credibility when it comes to information is problematic. That's where it's a little bit low, and I think you have two sources that you give us in the presentation. They both occur right at the end of the presentation. There's no information before that. None of it is statistical in nature. So the last piece of information that you give us from the Australian Institute of Criminology says they got low rates of X, Y, and Z, these things that you're talking about, but we don't get any numbers of that. And by the way, we don't get any contrasting information that shows, for instance, that prostitution in its other forms has disappeared. So there's an assumption here that I think that if prostitution is legalized in brothels, that all the other prostitution that is so dangerous and problematic is going to go away. And I didn't get any information that suggests that that's the case. And that's an assumption of your argument that needs to be proven. The only other piece of information that you had that you at least had a citation on was the quote from Dr. Rio. And it's a pretty good quote, but it's mostly background information. It doesn't allow us to draw much of an inference from it. It's simply describing something that is generally true, but I'm not sure that it's something that we can make an inference from. So I think presentation-wise, structurally, you're in good shape. Content-wise, when it comes to the evidence, that's what's lacking, and you're going to have to work on those kinds of things. All right, thank you.